Hallgrímur Helgason, hello. You are in Kiel in a
Hello.
hotel. On 14th of October, your novel 60 Kilo of Sunshine was published by TROPEN, translated by Karl Ludwig Wetzig, who succeeded very well to interpret the tension in your novel. Sometimes you go to the bookstore to buy a real novel that takes you somewhere else. 60 Kilo of Sunshine is such a book. Only the cover picture, two sailing ships in a stormy sea in the background, the tips of an iceberg, betrays something of a subtitle, Iceland is on its way to the modernity. What does the sunshine have to do with it?
Sunshine is the hope, because these are difficult times in Iceland. People were poor and didn't have much, and very isolated from the rest of the world. And there was a lot of disasters like avalanches and bad weather, and people died at trying to fish in the ocean. So 60 Kilos of Sunshine is the hope that they are relying on, or still lives in their hearts, or you can interpret it in many ways.
We read the book at home. I read it to my wife. After a few days, we arrived at page 395. We'll read the rest.
You read it out loud?
Loud, yes.
Okay.
When we stop in the evening, she says, one more chapter. Apart from your wonderful narrative style is a drama in your novel, which overlays the descriptions, a deliberate means of showing how the people go to the modern age.
Yes, exactly. I'm trying to show the journey of Iceland from the dark ages to the modern age, from the stormy weather to the sunshine, so to speak. But I tried the characters and invent good stories that capture the reader. But also I had to do a lot of research and try to paint a convincing picture of the Iceland that was existing in the late 19th century, beginning of the 20th. So I had to read a lot of books and old newspapers as well, and so a lot of work went into that.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell me how do you conceive the idea of your book?
It was a dream to write about the herring boom in Iceland. I write about Siglufjörður, which is a small fjord up north in Iceland. It was my dream always to write about it because I liked it so much, and I was always blown away by the fact that the herring industry started there, and this fjord went from 10 inhabitants to 30,000 in 30 years. So this is the only big city that we have seen in Iceland. I was there in this small fjord up north. Mm-hmm. Very international and full of life. It was like Manhattan, small Manhattan. And so I was fascinated by this, but then I never knew how to start the book. But then I came across an old book from the 19th century describing a poor farmer's life. And he was coming home just before Christmas with some wheat in his bag, so his wife could bake some cakes and bread for the holidays. And when he comes over the mountain into his old fjord, the fjord is so much covered in snow, he cannot find his own farm. This is a true story. And then I took it from there. For me, the whiteness of the snow was like a blank page, and then I would start writing my story on that page. And then I had the beginning, and so I could start.
Mm-hmm. How long did you take to write it?
It took me like 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Eilifur Gudmundsen, Gestur, the priest Sarah Arni, and Hafstein, a sort of major, and all the other characters stand for certain perspectives of development, each of them advancing in his own way, and they contribute to modernization. Did you imagine the characters in order of some aspects of this modernization?
Yes, I wanted to have like a manifold gallery of characters showing the spectrum, you know, from the farmer to the priest to the merchant and to the sheriff and to the small boy and the old man and the old woman, and you know, have it all, like a gallery of characters. And most of them I found in old history books. For example, the priest Séra Árni, his name in real life was Séra Bjarni Thorsteinsson, and he was a collector of folk songs, and he saved the Icelandic folk song tradition from extinction and brought it into the modern life with because he wrote the songs down. So he was like Bruder Grimm in Iceland. And the Hafstein is also based on a real character, the sheriff. And but the Gestur, the boy, is invented, and Eilifur Gudmundsson is based on this old 19th century book that I found. And then Lausi, the farmer, he's my invention as well. So I try to mingle it all together and try to give a convincing picture. And then I had to invent a lot of women, because the documents only tell you about what the men were doing, but you have to imagine what the women were thinking.
We have read yesterday evening the chapter of the wife of the priest, and I will reread this evening. It's marvelous. It's wonderful. The folk songs and the tradition is a detail, but it's an important detail, because there's a relationship between the tradition and the beginning of the modern age in your novel. That's important, isn't it so?
Yes, we are proud of our tradition, but you know, you can't eat tradition, so we had to develop into more modern ways of living, and luckily the Norwegians came. This is like a story of 1,000 years of solitude, and with one broken by one small Norwegian herring boat. Because when the Norwegians came to start to fish herring, everything's changed in Iceland. This very stagnant and poor Bauerngesellschaft, or farmers' society, it fell apart, because their people had been in slavery and they had been stuck on the farm all their lives. They had never seen money. They didn't get decent work. They were only paid in food and clothing. And so they didn't have anything. And they were even banned from getting married or having children. So they didn't have any rights, any human rights. And then the Norwegians came and offered them job, fishing herring and assalting herring, putting herring in the barrel. All the women did that, and it was a big revelation and a revolution in Iceland when the Norwegians came and those jobs.
And this tradition, I would resume it like the folk songs, and the tradition is where we come from and where we want to go. And this is important for the modernization, I think. The ships coming into the fjord from outside, and the ships with the emigrants leaving the fjord. The villages along the fjord are connected to the world, like in a computer strategy game, with which you can build cities. In this way, you find the starting point of the modern times of Segelfjordur. When was this starting point? The arriving of other people, or a change of mind of the inhabitants of Segelfjordur?
This all happened in 1904 when the Norwegians came. And they set up their base and built houses and factories and a harbor, and they needed all this equipment to be able to fish the herring. And then that started the town, really. So it's sort of, I wanted to describe how the town was born in a way. So it's also a novel about the birth of a town and how it became like a sort of a Klondike during the 20s and 30s. And that's, of course, not in this book. But this was kind of like our gold rush, even though people call it silver rush, because herring is the silver of the ocean, we call it in Iceland. But yes, this was a very important thing that they because we had been a Danish colony for 600 years and the Danes never did anything for us. And then suddenly the Norwegians came and they were only thinking about by fishing herring. But doing so, they also made us making money. as well. So it was a win-win situation. Some people were against it because they were afraid the Norwegians were stealing things or using us, but I don't think that was the case. I think history showed that the herring boom was a
The poverty in the cabins, especially in winter, is depicted with great empathy in 60 Kilos of Sunshine. Resignation never appears. Where did the urge of the inhabitants come from to go into modernity? Did it came from individuals like Sarah Arni, from the circumstances, from a certain feeling to be inhabitants of Iceland?
Yeah, Sarah Arni, he is a special kind of character, for he comes from down south. He's educated as a priest, the only educated man in the fjord. And this was a very lonely job, being a priest. So he had to, of course, maybe he didn't believe in God, but still he had to be a priest. Because back then, priests were being a priest was the only possibility for a man of letters. If you had some talent in music or painting or writing, or if you were an intellectual, or if you didn't want to be a farmer all your life, that was your only escape from that reality, was to become a priest. So all the priests in Iceland were like that, and many of them didn't believe in God because they were so educated. So it was like a very strange situation. They all of Iceland believed in God except the priests. And then they started being really melancholic and depressed because they had to give sermons and didn't believe in it. And they started drinking, and alcoholism among priests in Iceland was really a big problem. Also with Séra Árni, even though he's trying to fight it, but he's not like the others. He doesn't die in front of the altar. Still, it's a problem for him. And
but there's also Hafstein, who does not fear to ask 10,000 crowns.
Well, he was going to ask for like 2,000, and then then suddenly he's like facing the first Norwegian captain that comes to his fjord, and he doesn't have any idea what kind of money he should ask for, because the captain is asking for how much do you want for us to be here in the summer? We're gonna rent this space and this amount of land, and we need the harbor and everything. So how much do you want? And he had no idea what to say. And then at the last moment, he gets like a flash in his head and says, just out of the blue, he was going to say 1,000 or 2,000, but then he says, like, he saw the ship was so big, he said 10,000, and the Norwegian captain said,
yes.
Okay. And that was such a big shock. And he couldn't sleep for like a whole week after, because maybe I should have said 50,000 or 100,000, or he didn't know. So, and of course it was so much money that it made him uncomfortable, unhappy in a way. So he suddenly had his bed full of money and didn't know what to do with it.
And also the role of the wives are important. The 3 wives of the priests.
Yes, because each time the priest dies out of alcoholism, he leaves the wife. So the wives pile up in this on this farm there. So there are 3 ex-priest wives, 3 widows living in the house. And they don't seem to be able to die, and they just spend their days there. And they're pretty well taken care of because the state was paying for them a little bit money for being a widow of the priest.
Thank you very much. Your book, 60 Kilo of Sunshine, in der Übersetzung von Karl Ludwig Wetzig, ist gerade bei TROPEN erschienen. Thank you very much.
Danke sehr. Auf Wiedersehen. Grüße nach Stuttgart.